Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to Revelations with Rowena. I'm your host, Dr. Rowena Winkler, and I am very smiley, very grinny because I am so excited to talk to my good friend and beloved guest for today, Sarah Scott, the mommy blogger. I feel like this is so timely because March was really difficult for my husband and I. Our kiddo got sick, like got pneumonia. It's just been a challenging time for parents and moms in general with the pandemic and everything. So before we get into all of that, I usually start off by having folks share, where you've come from, what's your story, and what brought you to this amazing work that you're doing today.
For sure. I'm super happy to be here. Thank you, Dr. Rowena, for having me. And yeah, so like Dr. Rowena said, my name is Sarah Scott, and I'm the mommy blogger. I hail from New York, and now I live in Los Angeles. I'm married to the love of my life, and I have two breathtaking children. My daughter, James, is 5.5, and Sage is 2.5. And I kind of, A, fell into parenting, and then B, it became a huge passion of mine. So I'm really grateful that I get to regularly share my thoughts and my experience and my life parenting. And I'm really grateful that it resonates with so many.
So today we wanted to talk about authentic parenting. What the hell is that? What does that mean? And how can we become more authentic parents?
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting. A friend of mine on Instagram posted about really trusting ourselves. I think there's a lot of information out there. I consume an insane amount of parenting information. It's insane. No one should consume that much about parenting, but I do, and I love it. And I just like soak it all up. And really, what you see so often is like these like scripts. This is what you do in this moment. This is what you say in this moment. This is what, and those are helpful, especially for people like me who came from very traumatic, toxic households. And I'm trying to shift the way that I parent. And I don't have prior knowledge. I don't really have prior experience. Those kinds of things are helpful, but really just being attuned to ourselves and listening to our gut, our intuition, and having that guide our parenting has been like just mind blowing recently. But I guess all to say, authentic parenting is a term that I coined. I'm sure other people have coined the term in their own way, but I had never heard it before I used it. When I started out on this parenting journey, I learned about respectful parenting and gentle parenting and Montessori parenting and conscious parenting and all the parentings. And I didn't necessarily feel like I resonated with every single piece of each philosophy, but I grabbed the things that I loved about each philosophy. And I asked myself, how can my partner and I implement these philosophies or these pieces of these philosophies in our home authentically? And that's kind of what authentic parenting is.
So can you give us some examples of some of those pieces that you pulled from other frameworks and brought into this authentic parenting approach or paradigm?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, you hear my voice. My voice never sounds like this. I was at this like walkathon for my daughter, and she's in kindergarten. So you would think it wouldn't be that crazy, but it got crazy, it got wild. And I was just screaming my head off, having the time of my life. So,
Well, listen, that's authenticity right there, right? That you come through full transparency. My voice is like this because I was screaming for my kiddo. We love it.
yes, it's the best. So, one thing that I was reading this book about Danish parenting. And one thing that I really resonated with was they were saying like when kids have like little tussles, like kids have like little disagreements, like there's no reason to get engaged with that. And that's very dissonant from like respectful parenting. Respectful parenting says, let me take a step back and watch, but I'm very much right there. I'm right there, and I'm going to help these two kind of suss it out. And like the Danish parenting, it's kind of like you trust your kid that they can handle it and that they can figure it out. And then Also, your kid's going to be the bottom of the totem pole one day, the top of the totem pole another day, and
Oh,
everything in between. And them learning through experience how it feels to get maybe picked on or maybe shoved to the side, so that when they're the top of the totem pole, then that experience informs how they behave at the top of that totem pole, right?
oh, wow, that's interesting.
And then, so that's kind of one thing that I really rely heavily on: respectful, conscious, gentle parenting. But that was one thing that I really resonated with from, I think the book is called like How to Raise Happy Kids or something.
Mhm.
And that I took from that and I can't let it go. So it's like, I really am not the parent who walks around the playground following my kid. I just watch from a distance, make sure that they're fairly safe, and let them kind of navigate their own friend relations.
I remember, Sarah, you posted about this on Instagram a while back, and I commented like, I'm not there yet. I'm definitely the one that's following my kiddo around. But I will say, I took her to the playground this past weekend, and I did not follow her everywhere. So there's been some progress, probably because she's a little bit older too, and I'm not as freaked out about her falling on her face. But
Yeah. And
yeah,
that's like, that's a huge, I think about the playground. The playground, I get to spend so much time with my son at the playground. I'm so grateful. And I think parents follow their kids around the playground because they're worried, right? Like that's the reason why. No one wants to do that. That sounds like the
right.
most boring thing in the world, but they're worried that their kid's going to fall. So like the two things that I say is that so often, myself included, we bring our kids to playgrounds that are not for their age, so that when they fall, I think they're falling from a crazy height, and of course it's like very unsafe. And so we bring our 2-year-old to the park, and like on like the thing it says ages 5 to 12, and he's 2. So like it's
Yeah.
not the maybe wisest choice. So like I have to keep an extra careful eye on him, because it's not designed for him. And then when we are able to, when we find a space where we feel like if they fall, it's going to be cool, and when we are able to kind of relinquish that control and let them play and just watch them, you'll find that your kid is being their more or their most authentic selves, that they
Yeah.
feel more free to just play, and maybe like even a grown-up's not watching me. I went to this Montessori school to tour one time, and they had this huge like wooded area that was like theirs, and I was like, well, where are the kids? And they're like, oh, they're like all playing. Some kids, like it was like maybe like the second, third, and fourth graders, like recess time. They were all like playing in the woods. And I was like, but the
Wow.
adults are like sitting on the bench. Like shouldn't they be with them? And they were like, no, they're okay. And I was like, and that scared me as a parent and
Yeah.
also inspired me, and just reminded me that like most of the time my kid's going to be okay. And when I project my fears onto them, it really just like
Yeah.
limits them and kind of puts them in this box. It's not the worst thing in the world, but I just try to let them be a little bit more free, even if it drives me crazy.
Yeah, do you have any tips for anxious moms like myself, and I'm sure other folks that tried how do we work with this? Because I know I deal with this as a mom, right? Like I want my kiddo to explore and experience the world and, maybe fall down on her face or what have you, but then I want to also protect her and be there. Like how do you deal with this tension? It's really hard.
Yeah. I think I'm like, me personally, I'm a naturally very brave person. That's something that I value tremendously. And so
Mm,
when I see that in my kids, it's exciting and terrifying, absolutely terrifying. I just remind myself like to think logically, right?
yeah.
And I remember how I grew up. I was doing the craziest stuff. I was like biking down the stairs at like 8 years old. My mom was like, "Cool, have fun." Um, and even people who, I never broke a bone, but even people who did, right? Like there's plenty
Yeah,
of kids who have like broken bones, and like it's cool, like they broke a bone, like that was just part of their childhood. So like
right.
I just think like, um I try to think like more rationally about it and just say it's probably going to be okay. This is probably my fear speaking, and my kid doesn't need to own
Mm,
that. My kid doesn't need to like carry around this burden of my fear. Putting my kids in environments where they're safe.
yeah,
That's how I feel safe for them being bold and brave and trying new
yeah,
things.
yeah.
If I bring Sage to a playground that's for 12-year-olds, it's not safe. And so
Right.
I'm anxious. But if I bring my kid to a playground that's for 2 to 5 year olds, he's cool. And I can just trust that he's gonna fall on his face. He's gonna cry for me. I'm gonna pick him up. Like I've done this already. So it's so important for our kids to fall. It's like one of the most important things in the world, not just when they're toddlers, when they're little kids, when they're big kids. It's so important to give our kids opportunities to fall and fail. And so, as anxious as I feel about it, I know just like my brain knows that it's important, and I continue to allow my kids to be in situations where they can fall and fail.
Yeah. No, that's a really great reminder, and I love our playground analogy that, or I guess playground experiences that we're bringing into this. So I I love this idea of ensuring that you're bringing your children to safe spaces, right? So that they feel like you feel comfortable and they feel comfortable exploring and falling on their face. And you mentioned at the start of this, and also you referenced it, the environment that you grew up in, right? And how your how that has impacted your own parenting. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Sure. To be honest, and in full disclosure, I don't expound on it a ton because it's a
No worries.
shared story. And so I try to honor the other people in that story, whether or not they may or may not deserve to be honored. I don't know. But what I
Appreciate
will
that.
say,
Yeah.
what I will say is that I grew up in a very abusive home: physical abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse.
Mm.
Um, Lots of abuse, lots of toxicity. My mom had 4 kids back to back to back to back.
Wow.
So we're all a year apart. Um, and they had like less financial resources, they had less education. So I have a tremendous amount of empathy for my parents. And I was raised around a lot of trauma, a lot of toxicity, and a lot of abuse. And so when I became a parent, I knew how I didn't want to parent, but I had no idea how to parent, like literally zero clue, because I had never seen an example of like a loving
Yeah.
parent.
Yeah.
And it brings me to like tears sometimes. I was just yesterday, my daughter woke up. I was like doing work. I try to wake up before them. And she
Mhm.
woke up and she snuck around the corner and she's like, "Hi, mommy." And I
Oh.
picked her up and I was just like rubbing her back. And I was just being so soft and gentle,
Mhm.
which isn't like a huge like a trait of mine. I'm not like a very soft human, but my kids have been able to gift me with this softness, and I'm therefore in turn able to gift them with that softness that I was never afforded.
Yeah.
And it's like these small moments of magic. So like yes, like at a large scale, I'm not abusing my kids, and that's cool. But on a smaller scale, in these like small, simple moments, I show up for my kids in ways that I always wished my parents would show up for me.
Yeah, and that intentionality with it as well. So that's such a beautiful, I love that. I love the softness and how transformative becoming a mom can be. What about, I know for me personally, becoming a mother, in addition to me remember, how to parent and how I can be a more loving, present parent. It was I gotta say, it was kind of triggering. It's been triggering for me as well, right? It's dealing with my own stuff. So how is the inner work and dealing with your own stuff, how does that play into being a more authentic parent and showing up for your kids?
I mean, if you want me to cry today, just let me know because
Listen, we've had people cry here. I've cried here. Like, I'm a Pisces, you know me, girl. Like, I'm here for it.
I'll say that having a daughter is so, especially having a daughter is so
Yeah.
triggering,
Oof.
so triggering.
Yes.
My daughter is mixed race and Black presenting. And even though her skin looks very different than mine, she looks just like me. If I look at pictures of me when I was 5 and look at pictures of her, I mean, look at her now, like we're the same, we have the same face. And so when I see her, I literally see me.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I don't have a ton of memories from my childhood, but the ones I do aren't great. And I see, like, I want to save myself. I physically can't because I'm here in 2022. I can't go back to 1990 to save myself and to comfort myself and console myself. So just like seeing, like 3 or 5 or whatever year old Sarah through the face of James, my daughter, has been just, yeah, triggering. It's a lot of like stuff to work through and sort through. And I'm
Yeah.
grateful that I had an amazing therapist. We tried EMDR therapy. We've done mindfulness work to kind of get to those like deeper, but it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's insane. And for me, I think, I think being able to like, I don't know if the word is forgive my parents. I'm not sure about that, but have a ton of empathy for them. Like
Yeah.
for me, that has been so healing where I can
Mhm.
just be like, I know that they didn't do a good job, but I also know that they did the best they could. And
Yeah.
so that's been really healing for me. You know, I feel like having kids has brought that healing because before it
Mhm.
was just a more resentment.
Yeah.
And then even immediately after I had my first kid, James, I was still full of resentment. I'm holding this sweet little baby, and I said, "How could they ever? How could anyone ever?" And then that sweet baby turns two, and I'm like, kind of makes sense. I get
Oh, no, I know.
it.
Kerrigan's too, and I'm already seeing it too, girl. I'm like, "Oh, okay. Here we are."
It's
No,
hard.
that resonates with me. Same, same. My daughter looks like me when I was young, when I was that age, and it brings up a lot of stuff, but, similarly, also did EMDR and therapy and just knowing your tools, right? And having your care team to support you and having that empathy, right? Doesn't necessarily have to be forgiveness, but as you
Hmm.
mentioned, but having that empathy and having perspective, right? I know that becoming mother gave me so much perspective on, man, this is hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard. This is
It's hard, and I have so many more things that my parents didn't have. Like I have,
yeah,
if
true.
I'm having a bad day, I just go grab a Starbucks, you know, or I can get my nails done. My parents didn't have the financial freedom to do that.
Yeah.
If I don't know how to breastfeed, like something's happening wrong with breastfeeding, I can go online, and there's a community of 20,000 women I can ask, hey, I'm struggling with this. What can I do at 2 o'clock in the morning? And people are awake, ready to answer.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many things I'm so blessed with. I'm in a really loving relationship. My parents weren't. And
Mhm.
so I'm like filled regularly, right? And so I think perspective is huge. And it's been like a huge part of my healing process for sure.
I love that you situate in the context too, right? Of where you are now as a parent and where they were and how you do have privilege and the blessings that you're able to pour into yourself as we're working through this. Okay. I don't even know where to go. I've been really enjoying this conversation. I'm like, "Oh man, this is so." Okay, you know what? Let's just go for it. My kiddos too. How to
Yeah.
practice loving, authentic parenting as the kiddo becomes a toddler, and it gets really, really challenging, you know?
Yeah, it gets tough for sure. I have a 2.5-year-old right now, and honestly, he's easier than James, my oldest, when she was 2 and 3 and 4. She's getting a little bit easier these days, but she really went through the toddler phase. It was very rough, and he's just like an easier human in general. He's just like
Mm,
so chill,
chill, yeah.
but he still has like his fair share of tantrums. But his main thing is throwing things. If he's mad, he'll throw anything near him. So if it's a bowl of cereal that's filled to the top with milk, it'll be all over the wall. It doesn't matter what it is. So he
Oh.
loves to throw things. So we're like really like we're like if he's mad, we're just like grabbing things out of his
Yeah.
reach. Um
Ah, run for cover.
I'll say a couple things. Like number one, I think a lot of people give the twos and the threes a bad rap, and I
Yeah,
see names like terrible twos and
yep,
three-nager. And I encourage all parents to stop using those terms yesterday if possible. I
yeah,
know that there's this like cuteness to it. You're like, oh, we're the terrible twos. And I resonate with that. And I think that how we frame things is how we experience them, right? And
yes.
so if we're framing the twos to be terrible, then I don't know why you're confused that they're terrible, right?
Yeah.
And two is challenging. And so understanding what is happening developmentally, like just doing the bare minimum research for what is developmentally appropriate for a 2-year-old, and you'll realize that they're breaking down because they don't have their basic needs met. They're
Yeah.
hungry or overstimulated or tired or thirsty. And that's how they communicate. They don't know how to communicate that. So they just start screaming and breaking down, kicking, biting. My daughter spit in my face when
Oh
she
my.
was 2.
Wow.
And she still will. She's 5.5, and she's kind of regressing in that way. She taught my son to spit, and then now that he's doing it a little bit, she's like, "Oh, I'm going to keep doing it." I'm like, "Bro, you're too old for this." But,
Oh
um,
no.
but these and some of these things are especially triggering for some parents. Their kid whining is like music to their ears. They're like, I don't care. But for some parents, it's insanely triggering. For some parents, throwing is triggering, or mess is triggering,
Yeah.
or talking back, right? And so what we were talking about earlier, you and I think that like knowing your triggers is incredibly important to show up for your kids in a loving way. I also try to remember that our kids act the wildest, the most freely around those with whom they feel the safest. And so,
Mm.
yes, my kid is acting in a wild way that is really challenging. And they're doing that around me because they feel safe around me. And I really want my kid to feel safe around me. What I love about respectful parenting is the biggest thing about respectful parenting, which is just to respect our kids. I think about, that saying, no crying over spilled milk. And when our kids spill milk on the floor, and we've told them a million times not to touch the milk. I told you not to touch it, stop touching it, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we have this big reaction because I've told you a million times, this is really annoying
Yeah.
now. There's a huge mess and we're late. And then I
Yeah.
want you to get into the mind frame of your friend is sitting at the table and your friend spilled milk. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there's no one who would be like, what is wrong with you? I told you not to touch the milk.
It's true.
In fact, we would show up for our friend with compassion. We
Yep.
would probably clean up the mess for our friend and say, it's no big deal. No
Yep.
worries. That
You're right.
happens.
You're right.
And so how are we not showing up in the same way, to the most vulnerable people in our lives? And I know
And
how. We're not, because it's frustrating and we deal with them all day, every day, right? It's frustrating, but that's kind of the perspective. How can we show up for our kids respectfully? How can we treat our kids with respect, even and especially when they're showing up as their worst selves?
wow. Holy crap. Okay, that just blew my mind. Dr. Rowena loves a good reframe, and thank you for doing that, right? I didn't even think of it like as a friend or as someone you would respect or love in this way. And the fact, yeah, that these little people, they're still developing and trying to figure out how to communicate. And yeah, those were really, really fantastic tips. Also, I know that I can be my worst self with my husband, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
comfortable and safe with him, I act up in ways as well that I would never act in front of, someone like you or other friends. So,
Yeah.
that's a really good reminder. We do it too.
I think also, like, parents sometimes are scared to practice respectful, conscious, gentle parenting because they don't want their kid that behavior to continue. They want to like nip it in the bud. I resonate with that, right? But like, if you can, I think we talked earlier about anxiety.
Yeah.
So much of our desire to like stop a behavior is around anxiety.
Yep.
If my kid is spilling milk now, by the time that they're 42, they're still gonna be spilling milk. And it's like, wait, what just happened here? Like, slow down. Your kid's not gonna be spilling milk at 42, you know? But so much of it is around anxiety. So much of it is, I have to stop this now. Otherwise, they're going to be a disrespectful teenager, or they'll be addicted to drugs, or any number of things that go on in our head. And
Yeah.
that none of that's happening right now. Right now, your kid is just 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. None of that's happening. And so if we can slow down and realize, I actually don't have to stop this behavior right now. I can stop it when I'm calm, when I'm cool and collected. Because right now, whatever I'm going to say is actually not going to come through because I'm going to yell it frustratedly, and my kid's going to tune me out because I'm yelling, and that's annoying, right? So I feel like if we can just realize that, like, it doesn't need to be resolved right now. We have 18 at least years with our kid, that we get to have a relationship with them, parent them. So giving ourselves space to be able to parent them over the course of 18 years.
I love that. And I know something that came to mind as you were sharing that is something that we've talked about before in terms of, apologizing to our kids, showing our emotions in front of our kids. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So if I wrote this ebook, which I'm so proud of, and it's amazing, and how to stop yelling at your kids in 5 days. But the best thing
We're gonna
about
put
that,
the link in the show notes, by the way, so that folks can download it.
thank you. But the best thing about that book is that I gave 3 real examples of when I was in my kid's face screaming on top of my lungs at her. Um, and why is it the best part of the book? That sounds crazy. That's the best part of the book because I think it helps parents like realize that they're not alone when they yell at their kids. Like I think everyone thinks that they're the only one who yells at their kids, and it's the worst thing in the world, you know.
Yeah.
And then I like kind of like showcase how I have learned to give myself grace faster and easier, and the impact that that has on my relationship with my kids. And so
Mm.
I can't truly apologize in a heartfelt way until I give myself grace, until I allow myself to be human. And when I do that, that I can show up for my kid and apologize in a way that's really just transformational. My kid is watching. It's like it's powerful. I really like honor my mess ups, the big ones and the small ones, because I give my kids very real examples of what it looks like to mess up, what it looks like to give myself grace, and what it looks like to fix a mess up. And that's so powerful. We can talk until we're blue in the face about I want, you know, I want to raise a kid who's able to give themselves grace. It's not a big deal. Like, why are they beating themselves up? And they're beating themselves up because they watched you beat yourself up.
Oh man, that is so powerful as a recovering perfectionist who is trying to break that cycle, like to that exact point. As someone who continues to this day, my friends and husband are like, Rowena, give yourself grace. It's so hard, but to be able to role model the power of that for your children so that they understand that it's okay to mess up, man, like it's going to be amazing to see how our kiddos grow up with that understanding.
Absolutely. Ideally, we're doing these things for us. But if you, as a parent, don't have the ability or the strength to make these choices, like giving yourself grace for yourself, and then I want you to think about your kids
Yeah.
and what an incredible gift that they get to have, or they get to watch their parents give themselves grace. And as they grow up, of course, we want our kids to give themselves grace, right? We don't want our kids to be
Yeah.
beating themselves up. And so when they watch us do that, that gives them permission to do the same. That's powerful.
Oh, the permission slip, so important.
Mm.
Okay, here's my last question. You know, I work with a lot of women. A lot of them are moms. A lot of them are overwhelmed, burnt out, hard on themselves. A lot of the stuff we had talked about today, based off of your work, your expertise, your lived experience, what advice would you give to a mama who's just feeling so lost and wanting to learn to step into their authenticity and just to show up as an authentic parent?
Yeah, I think again, if you can't do it for yourself, then do it for your kids. A lot of people like they're like so like martyr or like self-deprecating that they really can't show up for themselves in ways like we think about keeping promises to ourselves or whatever. Some people, myself included, aren't really good at that, and that's okay. If that's not where you are in your life right now, that's fine. You can reframe it and saying I'm doing this because I'm showing up for my kid in a better way. And so I wrote this blog post years ago. You can make your coffee and drink it too. When I became a parent, when I became pregnant, I had people just like fear mongering, saying, "Oh, drink your coffee hot now, you'll never drink it again. Enjoy your sleep now, you'll never sleep again," or whatever the heck fear mongering they had to say. And I've been drinking my coffee hot for 5.5 years. I've never drank cold coffee because it's a priority for me. Like I get to take care of myself, and not just my needs. I get to take care of my wants too. I
Mm.
get to do that. This book, Bringing Up Bebe, is about French parenting. It's the first parenting book I read and one of my favorites. There's so much of French parenting that I don't necessarily resonate with, but the piece that I resonate with insanely is that yes, you are a mom now, and that's so special. In fact, it's like one of my life's greatest passions. But outside of you being a mom and before you became a mom, you were a human. And so you have human needs and wants, and
Yeah.
they matter. And like just hearing that was like mind blowing as a mom of
Mhm.
like, I mean, I was reading that book when James was 2 weeks old. I was like, I matter. Okay, I do. And so that has been the foundation with which I parent. Sometimes I forget that.
Yeah.
And then I remind myself that I matter. This year, in fact, 2022 is the year where I'm just kind of tapping back into myself and relearning. Obviously, my body has changed, not obviously, but my body has changed tremendously. I have changed tremendously. And
Yeah.
so, kind of uh, tapping back in, touching in with myself, and learning who Sarah is, what is Sarah like,
Yeah.
and tapping back into just myself as a woman has been a goal of mine this year. And I'm really grateful to kind of be on that journey.
Oh, we've been seeing it on Instagram, friend. Like listen, follow her on Instagram. We'll have you share all of your information so folks can follow you, see you loving on yourself, your body, your essence, your embodiment, your radiance. It's really, really powerful. And I just want to thank you again for chatting and talking through this really important stuff that us as mommies we have to consider and think about because we have these little people that that we're helping to grow into human beings, right? I
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know that I remember a friend of ours who her children are grown, but something she told Derek and I before we even had Carrie, I think we were pregnant at that point. She said that her goal is she wants to raise like kind, nice, like human beings, right? Like we have to remember that these are human beings that we are we are growing and supporting, right?
Absolutely. And when we can show up for ourselves, again, it gives them permission to show up for themselves. And
Yeah.
like, I don't know, that's like the biggest gift I could ever give my kids.
For sure. I mean, I know that's what led me to this entrepreneurial journey and everything this was something I've been wanting to do, but after having her, I was like, well, I got to do it now. I got, I got a role model for cuz I know I would tell Carrie when she's growing like do it, go for it. So,
Yep.
how could I tell her to go for it if mommy's not going to go for it?
A
So,
million percent. I couldn't agree more.
yeah. So where can folks find you? Tell us a little bit more about this ebook and how folks can purchase it, download it, learn from it, read those 3 stories.
Just read them and weep. So, yeah. So, I wrote this ebook, How to Stop Yelling at Your Kids in 5 Days. And you can find that on my blog. You're not actually going to stop yelling at your kids in 5 days. That's unreasonable. But over the course of 5 days, I do give tips and I kind of break it down. So, we think about what are your triggers as a parent, and then where are they at developmentally? Why are they doing what they're doing? We talk about how to talk to your partner about it, what to
Mm,
do in the moment. So, in the moment where you feel like throwing your fist through a wall, what can you do? And then what to do when you mess up, not if you mess up, because you will mess up, I promise. And so that's the 5 chapters. We have some affirmations in the back, and then some. It's like a really dope appendix in the back, just kind of with extra resources. Yeah. And so I wrote that book because I knew that, especially during the pandemic, parents were really overwhelmed.
yes.
And because they were overwhelmed, they were just yelling at their kids, and they didn't want to. Their kids certainly didn't want them to. And so I really wanted to give all parents access to parent with more peace and have more peace in their home. In fact, so it's on sale on my website. And if you can't afford it for whatever reason, there's no judgment. DM me on Instagram and I will send you one for absolutely free, because peaceful parenting is not just for people who can afford it, it's for every single person. So I'm really happy to be able to gift that. And then you can find me. My website is thescottystyle.com, and you can find me on every platform at Scotty Style.
Well, thank you for the gift of you being here today and for sharing so much. I know that I certainly got a lot out of it, and I'm sure that folks that will be watching and listening will feel the same. So thank you again. And you mentioned affirmations, just FYI. Sarah and I know each other from an affirmations clubhouse room, and that's how we
Yes,
really, really good friends. So I love that you have affirmations in the book as well.
absolutely. And this conversation is a long time coming. So I'm really grateful that we got to do this. Really special. Thank you so much, Dr. Rowena.
No problem. So, friends, Next week, we're actually taking a little bit of a break because I'm flying to Atlanta to celebrate my husband getting his master's degree. Woo! It's been another long time coming, and I'm really excited because it means that, you know, now that he's no longer in school, we can be more co-parenting together, and that'll be really, really fun. So until then, I hope you take care of each other. Give yourself grace, as Sarah said, and if you need any tips or advice, I'll be sure to drop the show notes for Sarah's information because, as you heard today, she is just a powerhouse, a resource, an amazing mom, and amazing human. So thank you so much, Sarah, and hope to talk to you all soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.